Everyone who knows me really well knows that I am an X-Men fanatic. Some of the first series content that I created for this channel was X-Men related, and I was raised on the X-Men. I grew up with the 90s cartoon series from the time I was 7 years old, and I'm pretty sure my very first childhood crush was the 90s animated Cyclops. So, as you can imagine, I was ecstatic when I learned that the 1990s X-Men animated series was being revitalized for Disney+, with the story picking up from where it last ended. Today, I want to discuss what the show has done right so far, what kinds of changes it has made, and what I think of the voice acting and the new animation style. Now proceed with caution, because there will be spoilers, so you have been warned. Now, let's get the video started. X-Men 97 picks up more or less a year or so after the series left off. We see the Friends of Humanity is still continuing their hate-filled crusade, except this time, they're using Sentinel technology to do it, and they're upping the ante. Of course, they're still nabbing innocent mutants, such as Roberto da Costa, off the streets, but their agenda is only increasing now that the general public is becoming more sympathetic and tolerant of mutants. We're all seeing the X-Men making this effort to rebuild after Charles Xavier's death and sacrifice. Cyclops is still leading the team, except now he's also trying to step up as the head of the Institute while his wife, Jean, is 9 months pregnant with their son. The team has several additions, including Bishop and Morph, and this new version of Morph that the showrunners created is non-binary / gender fluid, which I'll discuss momentarily. But what really gets me excited is seeing that Morph isn't just on the sidelines, and we actually see more of their powers. The things that Morph can do are incredible, and I'm happy that they are a much more active participant than they were when they first debuted back in 1992. But as the team tries rebuilding, we see that they all must make some pretty big decisions. Jean is thinking about taking a break from the Institute to raise her son with Scott. We see that since she's very pregnant, she's more or less sidelined, and we see how deeply she worries about the future of her and Scott's son. We also see that Jubilee is no longer the scared little girl she was when she first started. She's become a pretty confident teenager who can hold her own. Sure, she still has an air of her old childish ways, but at the end of the day, she's also still a kid, and she's able to empathize with Sunspot, their newest resident at the Institute. But what really strikes me is the ending of the first episode, when Magneto steps in and is said to become the new leader of the X-Men, according to the will of Professor X. And naturally, Scott's very distrustful of Magneto stepping in like this, and frankly, so is the UN, who call upon Magneto to have a hearing in front of all the world's leaders. Now, this is important, because this sets the stage that things with this show are very different. Granted, the tone of the show and the morals and lessons are all still the same, but it's somewhat much more mature. We hear Magneto talk about how there are people still discriminated against for their skin color, gender, and who they love, and that it's no different than how mutants are being discriminated against, which perfectly displays everything that the X-Men stories have stood for, that the people who found the most solace in X-Men stories are people of color, young women, teenagers, and people who are LGBT. This ties closely with a piece of dialogue Rogue shares with Magneto, where she mentions Magneto partially used his helmet to prevent himself from feeling how much Xavier loved him. Now, this could easily mean one of two things. It could either mean brotherly love, or it could mean a romantic kind of love, indicating that the two might have had a secret romance, and the show intentionally leaves that detail ambiguous. So, I guess we'll discover what Rogue meant by that as the rest of the episodes air. And this is what makes the decision with Morph being gender fluid so compelling. Morph was always a character who could literally be anybody, able to take on any gender, and as a result, copy another mutant's powers. We see how this power really aids the team, such as when Morph transforms into Archangel during the big battle with the Sentinels, and how they transform into the Blob to send a kinetically powered up Wolverine flying into the robots. So Morph isn't just being useless. They're actually doing something and living up to their full potential. The show is really doing such a great job of utilizing every single resource that it can, and nobody's power is being wasted so far. Even though Jean is sidelined, she still has a moment where she's a complete badass and uses Cerebro to read Henry Peter Gyrick's mind, and we see that she and Cyclops are more or less equal in their relationship. He relies on her just as much as she relies on him, and they're still the ultimate power couple. But what strikes me the most is that the language and content in the show are more or less matured up a lot more than they were years ago. I was surprised to hear Wolverine say, "Oh crap," when Jean goes into labor. And I was also shocked to see details of Cyclops bleeding when he gets into a blind fist fight with Executioner, at least until Morph came in and saved his sorry butt. If I recall correctly, the original series didn't have the characters using any swear words, no matter how mild, and there were never details of the characters bleeding. This time, it feels a lot more real, and I'm all here for it. This isn't just a show for little kids anymore. This is content that even adults can understand. It almost reminds me of what filmmakers did with kids' movies back in the 1990s, where films such as Mighty Ducks, Heavyweights, and The Sandlot utilized more mature content like adults drinking while driving, as well as the casual usage of racial slurs and 11-year-olds using words like pissed, crap, damn, and bitch.
Yo, dude, you obviously in the wrong hood. This is my dominion. This is a drug-free zone, you understand?
Yeah, man, that's right.
We ain't buying nothing. Now, I'm feeling generous today.
Come on.
So I'm gonna let you get your sorry vanilla booty out of here before we be using your eyeballs as hockey pucks.
The 90s was a time when you could get away with that more often because they were movies that might have had some more adult content to them. However, they were still innocent enough for young children to watch. That was what the average PG-rated movie was back in the 90s. So I'm glad to see that the X-Men 1997 series keeps up with that culture from back then and that it's well balanced. While there might be some mild cursing here and there, it's not happening excessively every single minute, and it's done very tastefully. And for me, that's all I could really ask for. However, what I really like is the animation style is more or less the same. Sure, everything is drawn on the computer rather than by hand like it used to be, but the artwork is still the exact same way I remember it. But adjusting to the new voice actors is taking me some time. While I'm glad Cal Dodd has returned as Wolverine and that the show is utilizing Jennifer Hale for Jean Grey after she'd voiced the same character in Wolverine and the X-Men, I'm not so used to Ray Chase replacing Norm Spencer as Cyclops. And this just reminds me further of Norm Spencer's passing from 3.5 years ago, which happened shortly before Kirby Morrow, who voiced Cyclops in X-Men Evolution, passed away. For me, Chase has got big shoes to fill, and while Cyclops still sounds like Cyclops, it almost makes me wish that they brought in Nolan North, who voiced Cyclops in Wolverine and the X-Men, but I guess the creators of the show didn't want Cyclops sounding like Deadpool again. Thank you for watching. If you're brand new, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for all notifications. Also be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'm curious to see what you all think of the show so far. And also, all of my socials will be linked down below in the description box per usual. God bless, happy viewing, and have a nice day everyone. See ya!